I am going to die. The cool night breeze, the light from the half-moon peeking out, and my senses from having lived an assassin all whispered the same words. I shall soon die. I looked around at my surroundings. There were many paths in the garden, between the shrubs that looked as soft as wool. But there was no path to life. There was only the path that reeked of death. Ray on! I raised my head upon hearing a voice, one that weighed heavily on my heart. A middle-aged man with what looked like white frost combed into long silvery hair stepped into view. It was him. Darius Robert. Like a morass of death, the enormous garden billowed death into the air due to the presence of a single man, the head of House Robert. Yes. I swallowed hard and opened my mouth. You have shown a competence that befits your title as the leader of the shadows. The family has grown even faster thanks to you moving behind the scenes. I merely did my job. I did not pretend to be happy or otherwise. I bowed my head like an emotionless wooden doll. But Rayon. He began softly. Do you think that a shadow needs freedom? Darius reached out his hand. His shadow extended its hand across the ground as well. It is enough for a shadow to follow its master's orders. Thoughts, emotions, feelings are unnecessary. That is correct. Why did you act on your own, even though you knew that? Darius' voice sharpened, becoming cold, and tightened around my heart. And you even broke your indoctrination. Goosebumps formed along my spine. I bit down on my tongue to hide my surprise. What? I had not spoken or acted differently than before, and I had not the slightest idea how he found out that the indoctrination had lost its effect. Speak. When, and how, did you break the indoctrination? At that point, it was clear that he already knew everything if he was acting like that. How did you find out? I bit my lip and raised my head. Indoctrination. It was how House Robert controlled the assassination team called Shadow. They abducted or bought young children and, after killing off their emotions, indoctrinated them and used them as assassins for the rest of their lives. I too was indoctrinated, but was able to get rid of the dreadful shackles in a strange turn of fate. Because you were preparing to escape the clan. Darius continued leisurely. I put 2 leashes on all of the assassins of Shadow, including you. The first one is indoctrination, and the second. Ugh! A scream burst from me before I even registered the extreme pain. It was as if my lungs and heart were being sawed through. Rage worm. The insect placed in your body is gouging your heart out at my command. Our rage worm. Rage worm was the worst black magic, the type that could even discern a slave's emotions. It seemed as if Darius had used the rage worm to become aware of my plan to escape House Robert. It's not enough to put on a facade of justice, you even went so far as to have fed me rage worm? You disgusting bastard. It's not disgusting. It's called being thorough. And you did actually break the indoctrination. Darius smiled, the warm gaze that he showed in public on his face. There is a saying that every human lives while wearing a mask. It's just that my mask is a little thicker and more special when compared to others. Darius Robert. I clenched my teeth. I raised my body, stifling the heart-splitting pain. I could not die without doing something. I was abducted at an age that I do not even remember properly, and was raised to become an underground hunting dog and assassin for House Robert. I had lived, forgetting all emotion and feeling, and only coincidentally managed to break free from the indoctrination. I had thought that I could finally live according to my own will, but it was not the key to my prison but the shackles of death that met me. What sort of sin had I committed that forced me to live like a dog? I do not know. Damn it! A reddish water filled up the dried-off well of emotions. It was a rage that I had never felt before. You can stand in that state? Darius' expression wavered a little. I will not meet my end in disgrace. I grasped the sword at my waist. My senses, which had detected my death, had not changed since I stepped into the garden. I will die here. If I was meant to die anyway, I would not go down without a fight. At the very least, his arm. No, I would at least create a wound and die. Arg! I unsheathed my sword, the concentrated aura exploding. At that moment, the blade stretching out broke in half. Click! I heard the sound of the necklace around my neck falling to the ground. The world spun as Darius' cold eyes and the moon flipped upside down. Ah! That's when I knew. My head had been cut off by Darius' sword. However, the assassin's sword is not all that meets the eye. The frightening aura hidden behind the broken blade flew towards Darius' face. How vulgar! Darius waved his hand as if annoyed. The final attack went out like a flame at the light gesture, as if he were swatting away a fly. As expected. Darius was a warrior said to be the strongest in the continent. It was expected that I would be unable to win. For he was strong, and I was weak. It could not be helped. Yes. It can. The rage that had begun to spread from the bottom of my heart boiled up like lava. It was unfair that my entire life had been toyed with by Darius, and it was a painful shame that I could not complete the ring of fire that I had obtained by fate. I could not die that way. God, or even the devil was fine. As the rage, the desire to tear Darius' mask off and slit his throat at any cost, engulfed my whole body, my world ceased in red. Reaper scans. Translator, LKJGH. Proofreader, Harley. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://dsc.gg/reapercomics. Darius Robert brought his right hand up and frowned. I definitely blocked that. There was a small wound on the back of his hand, even though he had perfectly cut off the final sword attack from that piece of trash. It has been years since he last had an injury that drew blood. Ridiculous. That man had broken from the indoctrination on his own, endured the torture of the rageworm, and had even left an injury on Darius' body. It was disconcerting, wondering what happened to the hunting dog raised to be an expendable object. Only. Rayon was now dead. Though he went against common sense, there was no need to bother with him any longer. Clean it. Soldiers hidden in the shadows of the garden rushed out and moved towards Rayon's body the moment Darius turned his back. Blink. Rayon's necklace, sunk deep in red blood, emitted a bluish light, but there was none who could see it. You have been chosen by Wrath. Wrath will descend upon your body. Your body has died. Error. Reincarnation. A fantastical notion that many believe to exist, but at the same time many did not believe in. Rayon did not believe in rebirth either. He had been indoctrinated his whole life, and when he broke free from it he was busy with preparations to escape House Robert. As such, he did not even consider such absurd thoughts. He thought that death was the end. However, Sunshine, look here. A beautiful lady, with red eyes and soft golden locks that flowed down over her shoulder, shook the blue-colored baby rattle. There is also a red one. She held out a red-colored one in her left hand as well. Rattle. Though he wrinkled his face at the sound of the rattles hitting each other, the blonde lady did not stop her shaking. Boo. Rayon gave a soft sigh and reached out for the baby rattle. Yes. Come this way. The blonde lady beamed broadly and shook the baby rattle more excitedly. There were two things in his field of view. A pair of arms, chubby like sausages, and a lady shaking the baby rattle. I still can't get used to this. These arms are my arms, and that lady is my mother. The lady's name was Sylvia. Though it was still pretty unbelievable, he had reincarnated into that lady's child whilst retaining the memories of his past life as an assassin. He had naturally regarded it as a dream at first. He thought that everything would be over after he got some sleep, but he never seemed to awaken from this strange dream, no matter how much he slept. And so the days had dubiously passed to become 100 days, and it was only then that Rayon accepted the fact that he had, in fact, reincarnated. Sunshine. Over here. Woo. When he slowly crawled towards the baby rattle, Sylvia stepped back little by little. Yes. A little more. Rayon followed Sylvia as he crawled and reached his hand out towards the rattle. Boo. But his body could not endure the weight of his heavy head and started leaning towards the right. Oh. Sylvia flung the baby rattle away and threw her body towards Rayon, embracing him in her arms. She's quick. Her body was very fast. Though he could not detect aura, it seemed that she had acquainted herself with some appropriate martial arts. Were you surprised? It's all right. It's fine. Sylvia patted Rayon's back. Ooh. Rayon shook his hand. Her patting did not stop, although he showed that he was not at all surprised and all right. My sunshine, shall we go see the flowers? Sylvia walked over to the window and opened the curtains whilst carrying him. The warm sunlight shone gently, like a soft cotton blanket. How can she still call me Sunshine? Sunshine, as Sylvia called him, was not his actual name. It was a baby bump name. It was the head of house who had to come and choose his name, but he appeared to be terribly busy and Rayon had yet to see a sign of him. Thus, there was no choice but to be called by the baby bump named Sunshine, even after more than 100 days had passed. Phew! Rayon looked about, still in Sylvia's arms. The room was wide enough to be able to run around in, the walls had a luxurious sea-colored wallpaper, and there was magic lighting hanging from the ceiling that lit up, even at night. He could not determine much, for his body was a baby's and slept more than 20 hours a day, but one thing was certain. This was a wealthy family, and one with quite the reputation at that. Not bad. A rich or powerful family was preferable over a normal one in any case, now that he had been reborn. I need to take revenge. The horrifying feeling of having his neck chopped off by Darius was still vivid in his mind. He had thought that all his feelings had been worn away while being raised as an assassin. His memory before death must have been intense, for his rage and thirst for revenge clearly remained. But I should not be impatient. Rayon breathed deeply and calmed his emotions. He knew nothing about where he was, or what his position was, as he lived exclusively within this room. It would not be too late to make preparations for revenge after getting a grasp of the situation. The most important virtue for an assassin was patience, and he had once been the best of the assassins. He could rein in his feelings and thirst for revenge any time. Also, he had obtained the Ring of Fire in his past life through some fate, which was said to be the most powerful skill that could be attained by a swordsman 1,000 years ago. If he were to master the Ring of Fire, it might be possible for him to kill Darius Robert not by assassination, but even by facing him head-on. He would have to endure and endure again for that day to come. Anyway, I am starting to feel a little sleepy again. He felt drowsy in Sylvia's arms, under the warm sunlight. A baby's body was inconvenient in many ways. He really had not spent a long time thinking, yet he was already falling asleep. You sleepy, Sunshine? Let's go to bed, then. Sylvia slowed her patting on his back with a smile. It was just as he was dozing off and his neck was falling backwards that. Lady Sylvia. The door opened without a knock, and Sylvia's maid entered the room. The head of house is on his way. My father? Sylvia widened her eyes in shock at the maid's words. Father? It appeared that the head of house was not his father, but his grandfather, since she called him father. I shall have to get ready. It is too late. He is already outside. Oh dear. Sylvia and the maids became very flustered, tapping their feet repeatedly. Clomp. There was the sound of footsteps outside the half-open door, which sounded stiff enough to make one's body shrink. Who is the head of house? Rayon stealthily opened his eyes and turned his head towards the door. An old man with red eyes and radiant blonde hair smoothed over his forehead approached. Sylvia and the maid trembled at the sound of his overbearing footsteps. Ah! The passage of time slowed down the moment he saw the old man's eyes. It almost felt as if his surroundings were blurred by his overbearing presence. Father. Is this the child? The old man stopped in front of Sylvia and pointed with his chin, frost in his gaze. "Oh, yes." Sylvia nodded her head heavily and held Rayon out to him. "Ah." Rayon's round eyes grew wider. As he looked right into his face, he felt as if he had seen him before. Blonde with red eyes. An old man with cold features, as if surrounding himself with a sheet of ice. "Oh." A thunderbolt struck his small head. Glenn Sieghart, the destructive king of the north. The family was referred to as the apex of the continent, and its leader was looking down at him. A small gasp of surprise escaped his small mouth on its own. It seemed that he was reborn into the most powerful family in the continent. In the continent, there were 6 who dwelled within the light and 5 within the darkness. The 6 powers, who rose up to become the radiant sons of the continent, were called the 6 kings. Those who lurked within the underground, who spread defeat and fear, were called the 5 demons. House Sieghart was one of the 6 kings, and ruled over the north. Ah-ooh. Rayon made eye contact with the head of House Sieghart and widened his round mouth. Is this a good thing? Sieghart didn't lose out in any way to House Robert, the place that had exploited and killed him in his past life. His day of revenge could be brought forward if he built up his strength in that environment. He is blonde and has red eyes, just like you and me, father. Sylvia smiled gently and stroked Rayon's hair while he agonized over how to act from then on. Glenn maintained his overwhelming pressure over the others, even as he held Rayon up. Ha! Rayon's body shuddered. It was because a warm and gentle energy entered through his wrist the moment Glenn picked him up. Ooh! At the feel of aura, which he had not felt in a long time, he let out a noise before he even realized it. What sort of aura? Glenn's aura was not only warm. It also contained an enormously high level of purity, like it came straight from nature. It's warming up my body. Rayon was much more sensitive to the cold after his reincarnation. At first, he assumed it was because his body was that of a young child. Instead, there was actually a major problem with his constitution. But the moment he received Glenn's aura, his whole body became warmer, as if sunlight had entered his bloodstream. Glenn used his aura to check through Rayon's body inch by inch, returning him to Sylvia afterwards. What? Rayon narrowed his eyes. There was no way that a warrior like Glenn did not know there was an issue with his body, yet there was no change in his expression. He could not understand why he maintained that expression, even after finding out his grandson was not normal. Sylvia. Yes. The child's name shall be Rayon. Rayon? Father. The name Rayon means. Sylvia's eyebrows furrowed heavily. It literally means that. Quiet like a shadow. It means to live without standing out. Unlike his gentle use of aura, Glenn's voice was cold as frost. Huh? Was it fate or something? His name was the same as in his past life, and the meaning was also the same. A laugh forced its way out at the absurdity of the situation. He knew that Glenn was a cold-hearted person, but he did not know that Glenn would have no interest in his sick grandson. That is all. Glenn brushed off his dark red coat and turned his body away, as if not wanting to be there any longer. Wait. Father. Another name, at least. Sylvia followed him while carrying Rayon, but Glenn did not turn back. He promptly left the mansion. It seemed more accurate to say that they were strangers, not father and daughter. Ooh. Rayon's lips trembled. He wanted to stay quiet, but a moan escaped his lips at the chilly wind blowing in from outside. I am sorry. Sylvia hugged Rayon close and buried her face in his body. It appeared she was barely holding back tears. There is something here. But I'm too sleepy. I can't think. Rayon slowly closed his eyes, feeling both the cold wind and Sylvia's warmth skim over his entire body. A child's body really is very inconvenient. The moon was floating in the middle of the sky. Rayon, who was lying down on the crib, cautiously opened his eyes. She's asleep. He turned his head to the side. Sylvia was sleeping on the bed right beside him. Knock. It appeared she was sound asleep, since she did not wake up even when he tapped on the crib. Phew. He let out a small sigh. The past 100 days had been extremely suffocating. He became terribly drowsy all the time, and he could not use mana nor train because he was with Sylvia whenever he was awake. He couldn't do anything, as there could be a problem if he were to be even gently nudged during his practice. But his chance had finally arrived. Crib. He got to sleep separately in the warm crib from that day onward, once Helen, the head maid of the bedchambers, offered her advice. Though she was right beside him, there was no way Sylvia would wake up. It was the perfect time to begin his practice. Let's get started. Rayon slowly exhaled. With the cultivation of the Ring of Fire. The method of the practice, implemented in the continent, was about accumulating aura in the abdomen by taking in mana from nature via breathing. But the practice for the Ring of Fire, which he had obtained by fate in his past life, was different. By rotating the spherical ring around one's heart, as if one were a sorcerer making a magic circle, one's physical strength and body would improve. At the same time, it also increased one's willpower and sensitivity to mana. Which meant that, though it could not create aura, the Ring of Fire was a cultivation technique that could help improve the mind and body, the perfect conditions for becoming a soldier. That is not the only advantage. The Ring of Fire was a practice that followed the flow of nature exactly. Even a soldier at the highest level would not be able to determine that he had practiced the Ring of Fire. Even Darius Robert, referred to as the greatest swordsman in the continent, did not know that Rayon had acquired the Ring of Fire. However, there was a very big issue with Rayon's body. Ice. The mana circuit, where mana flowed through like blood in his veins, was blocked by the massive amount of ice in his body. It was not long ago that he first discovered that fact. He had tried to use his mana for a brief moment, whilst acting as if he were asleep, but almost shrieked upon feeling the ice blocking his mana circuit. Rayon slowly took in a breath of air until his lungs ached, and felt the mana spread out in the air. It's being dispersed. Perhaps it was because his basic mana affinity was poor, but he could not feel mana that well, unlike his past self. He only barely managed to take in the mana, and settled it in his mana circuit after quite some time. Rayon suddenly stopped before he was to start practicing the Ring of Fire with the absorbed mana. I feel it, as expected. The mana circuit at his shoulder was half blocked by the ice. No wonder I am constantly drowsy, and so cold. The reason he has been sleeping more than 20 hours, and feeling the severe chilliness, was due to this ice. Is it in 9 places? He released some mana to scan through his entire body. There were 9 places in the mana circuit that were blocked by the cold. This is severe. Unlike that of an adult, a baby's mana circuit was wide open. Since the coldness filled it halfway, even while in that state, the entire mana circuit could become blocked as he grew older. Should that moment come, he would experience cold and pain that would be incomparable to what he experienced currently, or worse, die. He had to remove the ice, no matter what, before that happened. I should try to pierce through the coldness in my mana circuit, using the Ring of Fire. Though his practice with the Ring of Fire would be considerably delayed, the priority for the moment was to survive. Rayan slowly absorbed the mana as he took a deep breath. The absorbed mana cut into thin, sharp, awl-like pieces and pierced the coldness blocking his mana circuit. Screech! As if it was a frozen waterfall chipped away at by a fork, a tiny bit of the ice chipped off. Wait. Can't I make use of this? He could release the ice as it was, but it seemed a waste, especially considering the high purity of it. Rayan guided the coldness with the natural mana, following the flow of the Ring of Fire. The natural mana and the coldness that was blocking the mana circuit bonded together as one to circulate through the mana circuit throughout his body. I did it! Rayan clenched his fist. It was at a much slower speed when compared to in his past life, but he could use mana via the flow of the Ring of Fire without issue. He felt the cold air drawn forth by the mana settling in his body. It must be because it's a child's body. It was somewhat fortunate, as he would not have been able to circulate mana at all because of the ice if it wasn't a child's wide-open mana circuit. Next I should. Ha! Already? As if his body was saying it was tired after using its brain and strength a little, he started to feel sleepy. His eyelids lowered like curtains, completely against his will. Damn it! Rayan groaned angrily and closed his eyes. As he fell asleep, and the moon hung in the sky moved to just about 3 fingers width apart, a figure appeared outside the door. The person who entered without opening the door was the head of House Sieghart, Glenn. Glenn gazed at Rayan, who was asleep, and reached out his hand. A light as pale as the sunset bloomed out of his clenched hand. Rayan's forehead, which was crumpled due to the ice in his mana circuit, smoothed out like velvet. Reaper scans. Translator, LKJGH. Proofreader, Harley. Join our Discord for updates on releases. https://dsc.gg/reapercomics. ABUBU. Rayan gave a soft sigh. As expected, it isn't easy. There was no time to work on the Ring of Fire since his waking hours were short. Even then, he was mostly around other people. But considering the progress was delayed by the short, 1 to 2 hour practice time and the ice, the outcome was surprisingly decent. It was as if someone was helping him. Rayan, shall we move a bit more today? Sylvia bent over and shook the baby rattle. It appeared as though she thought he liked the rattle, as he continuously reacted to it. Playing with her is tiring. Frankly speaking, it was more tiring having to play with Sylvia or the maids than it was tolerating the ice. Though, it couldn't be helped. After all, his was an adult's consciousness inside a child's body. Ooh. It was just as Rayan bobbed his head and was about to crawl towards Sylvia. Click. The door opened smoothly and an unfamiliar old man with silver hair entered the room. He was wearing frayed and shabby clothes, but his eyes were as clear as the river. Oh. Uncle. Sylvia ran to the door with a bright smile on her face, as if she recognized the old man. It has been a long time. No. Saint. Awun. Rayan babbled in surprise before he realized it. He recognized the old man from the title of saint, and because of his beggar-like clothes. The Ragged Saint. The Ragged Saint Patrick was one of the most famous healers in the continent. Though his holy powers and medical experience extended beyond the sky, he was a vagabond and difficult to find even when one searched for him. Not saint. Just call me uncle, like before. Patrick chuckled and approached the bed Rayon was lying on. I heard that you had a child, and popped over on my way by. Is this the child? Ah, yes. Oh ho! Blonde with red eyes? Is he not the first since you? That's right. Isn't he beautiful? Sylvia stroked Rayon's hair and beamed. That's what I mean. He is not even a year old and looks pretty. Completely different from a wild guy like Glenn. Patrick chuckled and wagged his finger in front of Rayon. What's his name? It's Rayon. Rayon? His face wrinkled up at the name. His name can't mean shadow? It does. Whatever is Glenn thinking, naming the child Shadow? Patrick referred to House Sieghart's head as just Glenn. So the rumor that Glenn Sieghart and the Ragged Saint are friends is true, then. Rayon smacked his lips as he looked at the broom that was Patrick's hair. Having lived as an assassin, he did have quite a bit of information regarding the affairs of the world. It seemed that the information regarding the considerable closeness of Glenn Sieghart and the Ragged Saint was true. Rayon, allow this old man to look at you for a bit. Patrick gently massaged Rayon's shoulders and arms, legs and chest area. He chewed on his lips with a grave expression on his face, and finally spread out a white light. Upon basking in that light, a burning energy filled up his body, if he had entered a hot spring. Phew! Patrick turned his body after a low sigh. How is he? He is more sensitive to the cold, and grows slowly compared to the other children. Sylvia walked towards Patrick, her hands clasped together. It is the curse of the frost. Patrick knit his brows. See curse? What do you mean by that? It is not an actual curse. It is the constitution where an intense ice blocks the mana circuit. Ah. It is a constitution rarely seen, typically among young girls. It is my first time seeing a young boy born with the curse of the frost. He surveyed Rayon's body with an odd look in his eyes. There should be no major problems as his mana circuit is open, but he may experience serious chill and pain when the mana circuit starts to close up, that is, once he reaches 4 years of age. That. Sylvia chewed her lips uneasily. I can fix it on my own, so don't worry. Rayon shook his head slightly. Though it would take some time, he would be able to remove the ice by using the ring of fire. There was no actual need to get treated. There are a total of 9 chunks of coldness blocking the mana circuit. That is a number that even I have not seen in the young girls that I have treated before. And as each of the chunks of coldness are very potent, there is a possibility of mental slowness should a forceful attempt to drill through it be made. What about the method to cure it? Sylvia grabbed onto Patrick's sleeve, looking as if she might faint at any minute. Let him drink diluted elixir, containing the properties of fire, once a day. Let him bask under the sunlight for 2 hours at noon, when the sun is at its highest. Will he recover if we do that? As I have said, this is not an illness. It is a matter of constitution. He shall not return to heaven's bosom at a young age, at the very least, if you follow my directions. However, when Patrick cut his words short, everyone swallowed hard as he took his time answering. Because the ice will eat at the child's constitution and strength, it will be difficult for him to become a swordsman, even after treatment. That does not matter. Sylvia fiercely shook her head, as if to say that it was all fine, as long as he did not die. It is a relief that you think that way. Anyway, this child should. Knock, knock. Just as Patrick was about to give additional advice, the door opened with a knock. Please excuse me. A middle-aged man wearing posh formal attire entered the room and bowed his head. My lord is looking for the saint. Let him know that I will find him later. He has said to come find him immediately. Ha! He has such bad timing. Patrick clicked his tongue, and turned his head. Sylvia. I shall come by again later. Ah, yes. Patrick left the room with the middle-aged man after gazing at Rayon for a moment longer. The curse of frost. Rayon rubbed his fingers. I finally know. The identity of the ice that had tormented him had been revealed. Only, nothing would really change. He would cure the curse of frost and develop an incomparably outstanding physical body and affinity for mana before he became an adult, and he would do it by continuing to practice the Ring of Fire and removing the coldness at the same time. Rayon. The moment the door shut, Sylvia hugged Rayon and scrubbed at her face. It was how she acted when anxious. Mommy promises to save you. Whatever it takes. Her eyes, which were always smiling, filled up with tears. What's this? As Sylvia's trembling was conveyed to him, his heart felt suffocated. It felt as if a rough wire was scratching his heart. Though he did not know what the emotion was, he did not want to continue feeling that tingling sensation. Which was why. Abubu. With his small hands, Rayon wiped away the tears welled up in Sylvia's eyes. Ah! Young master! My goodness! Sylvia narrowed her eyes, and the maids gave a short shriek. Rayon! She lowered her head and caressed Rayon's hand, wet with her tears, for some time. Suddenly, she jumped to her feet. I must go find my father. The hesitation on Sylvia's face was gone. For the first time since Rayon was born, Sylvia made her way to the place where the head of House Sieghart resided. The way there was wide open, as the saint had passed by earlier. Madame Sylvia. The head of house is currently with. Move aside. She forcefully pushed past the attendants and maids blocking her way and knocked on the door of the audience chamber. Thump. 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 The enormous door started to open after 5 punch-like knocks. What is it? Glenn, who was sitting opposite Patrick and having tea, frowned. I beg you. Sylvia clenched her teeth hard and knelt. Please save Rayon. Though there were attendants behind her, she lowered her head to the ground as if she were a slave submitting to her master. Glenn watched Sylvia bow her head without batting an eye. You must have heard, yes? That it will be difficult for him to live as a soldier, even if his constitution were to be treated. Glenn knew of Rayon's condition, as if he had already heard of it. It will be fine if we do not raise him as a soldier. For one with the name of Sieghart to not become a soldier? Why should I give help to a child without any value? Because he is your grandson. That grandson is the child you brought back after leaving the family, after saying that you were going to cut all ties with us. That. Sylvia's trembling eyes were fixed to the floor. The only thing I can do for the child is give him the name of Sieghart. Once is enough for any act of foolishness. Glenn's face was cold, as if covered by a sheet of ice. Sieghart is a place where only the strongest survive. It is better to not have such a weak grandson. And won't you be able to obtain the elixir yourself? The elixir in the family repository would be much more effective than obtaining it from outside. Those are for the ones that improve the family name. There is nothing for a child who does nothing, even if he is my grandson. Get out, now. Father. Please. Sylvia dug her fingers into her palm as if to draw blood, and hit her head against the floor again. I cannot back down. If she were alone, she would have returned. She would have left without turning back before, due to her pride. But she now had a child she had to protect. She had to hang on until the end, for Rayon. Drag her out. Soldiers in black stepped out from behind the pillar at Glenn's stern orders. They grabbed onto both of Sylvia's arms and dragged her to the door. Please. Rayon. Sylvia screamed Rayon's name until the end, but Glenn turned his head away as if he wasn't interested. Phew. Patrick, who was observing everything, let out a sigh. Your acting is good, considering you were the one who called for me to check on your grandson's condition. Is it that hard to treat her honestly? You're being unnecessarily noisy. Just speak of his state, in detail. As I have said, the ice is blocking the mana circuit in 9 places. Although it is fine now, it will become more dangerous as he grows older. Patrick sipped his tea and continued. But I do not think there will be a major issue, thanks to you pushing away the ice with your aura. Glenn and Patrick did not know that Rayon was practicing the Ring of Fire, even though they had personally checked his body. The Ring of Fire was a method from 1,000 years ago, and did not make use of the lower abdomen. It was difficult to identify the Ring of Fire, even if one could be said to have absolute abilities. Young girls with the symptoms of the Curse of Frost make use of ice of the highest purity and can become excellent sorcerers or swordswomen, but it is different for young boys with warmer energies. As I said, it is close to impossible for your youngest grandson to become a soldier. It does not matter if he does not become a soldier, as long as he lives. You browbeat Sylvia, and now you say it does not matter? Even the destructive king of the north must love his grandson. Patrick chuckled heartily. Glenn ignored Patrick and drew his finger in the air. Buzz. As the space cracked open in a cross shape, a golden dimension opened up. 3 wooden boxes popped out of the fiery space. I assume you know how to do it? He spoke as he passed the boxes over to Patrick. Ah. This is why I do not bother with things like houses. Patrick sighed and accepted the wooden boxes. Take care of him. Glenn's sharp voice rang low, to a strange extent. Don't get me wrong, but why did you name the child Rayon? There are much better names out there, and out of everything it is Shadow. Shadow is not the only meaning of the name Rayon. He shook his head and watched the golden sun, floating high up in the sky. 1,000 years ago, it meant something entirely opposite. Here it is, milady. The head maid of the bedchambers, Helen, passed a steaming white bowl over to Sylvia. Thank you. Sylvia cooled the hot elixir as she looked at Rayon, who was fast asleep. Do you think it will be difficult to feed him? Children detest bitter things, milady. You disliked bitter medicine when you were young, as well. I did? You may not remember. There was a time that you even ran away, saying that you did not wish to take it. Hey, Rayon's listening. Ha ha. They both giggled as they glanced down at Rayon, who was snoring quietly. Indeed, no child likes medicine. Rayon is so young, too. He will hate it even more. But milady. I know. He must take it. Sylvia nodded her head in determination. This is an elixir from Uncle. I cannot let a single drop go to waste. As if her pleading with father had troubled him, Patrick had come by the annex again and given her 3 good quality elixirs with fire properties.